Okay guys, today we're going to be doing quadratics using square roots. These here, like example 1, are called square roots. To put them in your calculator, so if we're going to do the square root of 25, you're going to go to New Document, never save it, and you're going to go to Calculator. You're going to pick the Control button, which is right here, and right above the x squared, it looks like a little check mark, that is the square root. You're going to put your number in, and you're going to push Enter. So the square root of 25 is 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. We're going to do the same thing for 100, control and square root. The answer is 10. And the same thing for 64 is 8, because 10 times 10 is 100, and 8 times 8 is 64. These are called perfect squares, because they go nicely. There is no remainder, there is no decimal. Let's look at example 2. Now if I do the square root of 12, this is not a perfect square because it gives me a decimal. So when they are not perfect, you need to simplify. How do we simplify? We have to factor that 12. So let's remember our steps. You're going to go Menu, on the calculator. We're going to pick a number, which is 2. And then factor, which is 3. And you're going to factor whatever number it is. So we're going to factor 12. It is 2 squared times 3. So 2 squared times 3. Remember guys, 2 squared is the same thing as 2 times 2 and then times 3. Now what you have to do is you have to pick the pairs. So there is a pair of 2's here. And I call this square root, I call it the house. And the pairs are going to go outside the house. They got invited to the party. They're going to celebrate and go out to the party together. So these pair of 2's are going to go outside the house. Not for the pair. It is one pair of 2. This 3, he's single. He didn't get invited to the party. So guess what? He has to stay inside the house. He doesn't get to go to the party. That is how you simplify square roots that are not perfect. Let's do the same thing for square root of 60. So again, Menu, number, factor, 60. 2 squared times 3 times 5. 2 squared times 3 times 5. That's 2 times 2 times 3 times 5. We have a pair of 2's. So this pair, they got invited to the party, so they're going outside the house. But my 3 and my 5, they're single. The 3 is single and the 5 is single. They didn't get invited, so they have to stay in the house. We do not leave it 3 times 5. We simplify. So 3 times 5 is 15. So that is my answer, 2 square root of 15. Same thing on 24. Menu. Let's erase that. Menu, 2, 3, 24. 2 to the third times 3. 2 to the third times 3. So that's 2 3 times. 2, 2, 2, and 3. Now this one's a little trickier. You've got 3 2's, but we only have one pair of 2's. So the pair is what goes out to the party. Not all the 2's, only the pair goes out to the party. And who's left is my 2 and my 3. Now remember, just like the last one, we have to simplify that. And 2 times 3 is 6. So my answer here for 24 is 2 square root of 6. All right, last one is the square root of 6. So menu, 2, 3. 2 times 3. So if I have 2 times 3, that doesn't change, does it? There's no pairs. They're both single. So when they're both single and there's nothing you can simplify, the answer just stays the same. So the square root of 6 is just the square root of 6. All right, now that we've talked about square roots and reviewed them, let's go on to actually doing quadratics. Remember, when I have the x squared or t squared or any letter, that is where the quadratics come into place. I want to simplify this guy. So first you have to make sure all the numbers are on one side. So you want the numbers on this side, and you want your x or your letter on the other side. Since that is already the case, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Now, if I take the square root of x squared, it's going to leave me with just x, guys, because I'm breaking it apart. Now let's do 16. The square root of 16 is 4. But it's not just positive 4, it's also a negative 4. X can be positive or it can be negative. So if I write this as an ordered pair, I would put 4, 0, and I would write negative 4, 0. Here's my x value. Here's my ordered pair. Remember, sexy, x, y. And the last thing I can do is write it as a factor. Remember, when I write it as a factor, I pop these guys into the parentheses. And when I do, I change it. So this 4 is going to come here, but it's going to be a negative. And this 4 is going to come here, and it's going to be a positive. So I've given you my x value, I've given you my ordered pair, and I've also given you my factors, which is what we talked about this week. Let's look at example 4. So we talked about it, number on one side, letter on the other. This 4 is on the wrong side. I have to move the 4 to the other side. Don't forget, like terms have to go together. So numbers with numbers, x's with x's, x squareds with x squareds. When I move, just like I change my address when I move my house, you change that 4 to a negative 4. So you're going to get x squared equals 29 minus 4, which is 25. Now it looks like example 3. We're going to do the same thing. You're going to take the square root of both sides. The square root, control square root, 25 is 5. Remember, I told you up here, when I take the square root of x, it's still x. And then this is not just a positive 5, it's also a negative 5. So plus or minus. Sometimes they write it like this instead of writing them separate. So they can write it like this or separate. That is my x value. My ordered pair is 5, 0 and negative 5, 0. Last thing is my factors. Remember, when I put my factors in, when they pop in, they change. So this 5 becomes a negative. This 5 becomes a positive. So you have x minus 5 as your first parenthesis. X plus 5 is your second. Again, my x value, my ordered pair, my factors. Let me give you a minute to write that down. Okay, Let's go on to example 5. This one has a squared on the outside. So again, we want the numbers on one side, but I have to get rid of that parenthesis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the square root of that right now. And when I took the square root of the x, it just gave me the x squared. When I did the square root of the x squared here, it just gave me an x. So if I take the square root of this one, it's just going to give me x minus 9. On this side, I'm taking the square root of 1600. Doesn't matter how big it is, control square root. It's 40. Remember, plus or minus 40. So this is where I'm going to put my two symbols. It's either plus or it's a minus 40. I'm going to write it two ways. I'm going to say x minus 9 equals positive 40, and I'm going to write x minus 9 equals negative 40. Because it can be either one, I'm going to have two answers. Just like I had a positive and negative on the other side, I'm going to have a positive and a negative maybe. They might both be negative, just different numbers. These 9s have to move. They're on the wrong side. When I move, remember I change my address, I change my sign. This is going to be a positive 9. So positive 40, if you don't know, put in your calculator, positive 40 plus 9 is 49. So my first value of x, let's put it over here, equals 49. Now same thing, I'm going to move this over here, but this is a negative 40. This is where y'all are making mistakes. Negative 40 plus 9 is a negative 31. So my other value is going to be negative 31. Remember guys, this, if you put this in your calculator under graph, it would touch all the way on the right side at 49 and all the way on the left side at negative 31. So here is my x values. Let's write our ordered pairs. My ordered pairs would be 49, 0. Remember sexy. And negative 31, 0. Factors. We're plugging them into the parentheses. They come in, and when they come in, guys, the symbols change. When you put them into the parentheses, they change. When you take them out of the parentheses, they change. This is a negative 49. This is a positive 31. X values, ordered pairs, factors. Okay, example 6. Remember, letter on one side, number on the other. We've got to move this 7 to the other side. When I move the 7, it becomes a positive 7. So you get 8b squared equals 193 plus 7 is 200. I still have a number over here. So that means I've got to move this 8 also. Now, I'm not subtracting the 8. When they're sitting next to each other like this, a letter, a number and a letter, that means multiply. So we've got to do the opposite, which is divide 8 by both sides. So in your calculator, 200 divided by 8 is 25. B squared equals 25. Remember, it doesn't matter if it's not an x, guys. The steps and the rules still stay the same. So now we look like we did on example 1, where we had the x squared and the negative 6 or the 16. So you're going to take the square root of that b. B squared, 25. That's b plus or minus the square root of 25, which we should know already because we've already done it, plus it's a perfect square, is 5. Notice I'm writing it like this now. I'm not writing it separately when they're the same. Saves me a little writing. My ordered pair is 5, 0, because that's my positive 5. My other one is negative 5, 0. The last thing is my factors. Remember, pop them in. If you don't put the B's, you put X's. I'm not going to count that wrong because it means the same thing. Just be aware. If they ask you for a different letter and you don't see X's on the answers, that's why. So this 5 becomes a negative and this 5 becomes a positive. Here's my B values or my X values, my ordered pair, my factors. Guys, remember the ordered pair is also my roots, my solutions, my x-intercepts, my zeros. All 4 of those words mean the same thing. It's where it touches the graph at x. Okay, last one, example 7. We've got to move this 6 to the other side. When I move the 6 to the other side, it becomes a positive 6. So I'm going to get x squared equals 48 plus 6. 48 plus 6, which is 54. Then just like this one, we've got to take the square root of both sides. So I'm taking the square root of x squared and the square root of 54. The x squared is just going to be x, and we know it's going to be plus or minus because it's got to be both. Square root of 54. That is not a perfect square. So guys, you cannot put plus 7.34847 and minus 7.43. We have to simplify it just like we did up here when we factored and found the GCF and we moved outside the house. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take that 54 and factor it. So remember our steps. First, you go to menu. This is all on the calculator, not on the graph. So menu. Go to number 2, which is number. And then factor, which is number 3. We're going to factor 54. Okay, 2 times 3 to the third. 2 times 3 to the third. So 3 to the third means 3 3s. I have 3 3s. Right there it says to the third, so that's why I wrote 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're finding our partners, our pairs. There is a pair of 3s. 1 pair of 3s. So these guys got invited to the party. They're going outside the house. My 2 and my 3 here, they're single. They don't have a partner. So they have to stay inside the house. They did not get invited. So if they did not get invited, 2 times 3 is 6. They stayed in the house. They did not get invited to the party, guys. Whoever does not have a pair or a partner has to stay in the house. They do not get invited to the party. So this is my answer. X equals plus or minus 3 squared of 6. All right, I need you to answer the question here. Move on to your vocabulary. And if you have any questions, raise your hand.